Science is all about asking and answering fun and important questions. I recommend all students follow their passions, and if that leads you to a career in science, then it will open new doors for you. The problems facing the world today are complex and interrelated. Sometimes they're complex because we don't know the right questions to ask. Finding the right questions and uncovering them requires excitement and curiosity, a passion to uncover the truth. That's where science comes in. I'm a physicist, and today I'm going to be telling you something about the science of light. But the science of light involves physics, biology, and psychology. Light is a ubiquitous phenomenon. Light is something that we see every day, and it's important to work out what it means, where it comes from. Light is what we call an electromagnetic wave, which means that an electric field creates a magnetic field, which creates an electric field, and so on. Whenever we have a wave-like phenomenon, whenever something repeats itself, we define a wavelength. That's the length over which the signal repeats. So light is only part of the electromagnetic spectrum. There are many more phenomena that we don't necessarily think of as light that are described by the same science. So for example, your microwave oven cooks with light, and it cooks with light that has a wavelength of 10 centimeters. Your television picks up light which carries the TV signals on it. They can be from a few centimeters to a few meters. Visible light that we use to see, we measure in units of nanometers, billionths of a meter. So green light is 500 nanometers in wavelength, 500 billionths of a meter. Red light is around 700 nanometers. Smaller wavelength light is also important. Ultraviolet radiation that can be used to build computer chips is around 50 to 100 nanometers in wavelength, and X-rays are shorter still. White light is a combination of all colours where every colour has the same intensity. We see rainbows when white light reflects off droplets of water. Each component of the light, each colour, has a slightly different speed, and so gets reflected by a slightly different angle. That way, we see the spectrum of the light in the rainbow. The spectrometer is the device that we use to measure the spectrum, to measure the colours that are present in the light. It splits the light up more accurately than the rainbow does. It works by having a grating. This is a series of small ruled lines, and light interferes as it hits the grating. So the physics is only one half of the story, and the biology is fascinating as well. The eye works by having two kinds of cells, rods and cones. The rod cells tell us overall light levels, whereas the cones tell us the colour of the light. There are three kinds of cone cells, which are called approximately red, green, and blue. We perceive colours by what is called opponency. That is, we see the signal of the red versus the green versus the blue. That gives us many more colours that we can perceive, but they're still based on just these three primary colours. The biology of detecting red, green, and blue light is only half the story. The other most important part of perceiving colour occurs in the brain. The brain has to resolve the colours and make sense of them. And to do this, we need to know what we call the true colour. So while an object may always be the same colour in real life, because the illumination changes, for example, as a function of the time of day, the apparent colour detected by the eyes can change very markedly. One of the most well-known recent examples of our brain being fooled in this way is the so-called Amazon dress. The dress in these two images is in fact the same colour, although in one case it is perceived as being blue and black, and in the other it is perceived as being white and gold. The reason for this is because the brain assumes that the background is going to be grey, or equal colour illumination, and it sees all of the colours relative to that background. Because the background has changed colours, the dress appears to be a different colour. This illusion works on our expectations of the checkerboard and what happens when an object is in shade. In that way, we get confused about the relative colours of these two squares. You can have a lot of fun with colour illusions, and at the same time, they tell us something profound about how our brains work. Colour is all around us and vital to our human evolution and modern technology. To understand it requires physics, biology, and psychology. All we have to do to appreciate its beauty is to open our eyes.